pressing sports videography questions. What's going on? My name is Peter Strelis. I'm a freelance sports videographer from Toronto, Canada, and just seeing what you had to say and how I can help. Camera. I made a video about this a little less than a year ago now, talking about how I want to get essentially a real camera, and I'm waiting for either an FX6 Mark II or an FX3 Mark II from Sony to come out that has built-in ND filters. I just don't want to buy a camera that's like 6 or 7 years old, but I am very ready to spend at least $10,000 to $15,000 on like a real big camera. It's almost a necessity at this point in my career. I'm just a hesitant purchaser. Like, I never really can commit to what I want to buy, but it's going to happen very soon. I'd be shocked if I hadn't bought a cinema camera by the end of this year, and that will definitely be my next big purchase. Do you feel nervous ever before shooting events? And if so, what do you do to overcome those nerves? Generally, I would say I don't feel nervous before filming events. I've just been doing it for such a long time and have filmed so many different events, like small minor league stuff to like big professional stuff, so nothing feels like too crazy. I did get a little bit nervous before my first MLB game, and I've just started with the MLB this season, so my first one was actually just about a week ago now, and I did feel a little bit nervous because I've been watching the Blue Jays, whose home games I'm regularly filming, basically since I was a young child. And on top of that, baseball is a brand new sport for me. I have basically not shot it at a professional level until now. So it was a big learning experience. It was a high pressure environment with lots of eyeballs and lots of people watching, considering how that team did last year and how they were in the media. And so I was a little bit nervous going into it, but honestly, once I got there, it's just holding a camera at the end of the day. If you've put your reps in, then I don't think there's much reason to be nervous, because you should be confident in your abilities. At least that's how I feel. One of the best ways to overcome nerves, though, if you just feel like you can't shake it, is just to learn, gather information. At least in my opinion, that's one of the best ways, because when you go into something feeling prepared, it's a lot easier to call.
You don't need 1,000 square foot studio to start creating videos for YouTube. All you need to know is how to make the most efficient use of the space you currently have. I'm going to show you the exact systems and workflows that I use in my setup so you too can get high quality A-roll and overhead shots. I will also be sharing a bonus tip towards the end of the video, so make sure you watch till the end. I'll show you the exact equipments that I use and how I make the most of the small space that I have. So let's get into it. In my opinion, there are 4 items that make up the core of any production or setup: the camera, a form of stabilization, lighting, and audio. For the sake of the video, let's call these the 4 pillars of my setup. For the first pillar, the camera, I use the Sony FX3. The Sony FX3 is my A cam, and most of the times the settings that I use is 4K 24 frames per second, which is more than enough for YouTube videos. Depending on the kind of shoot that I'm doing, I'll have different settings, but that's for another video. For stabilization, I use the K&F Concept 94-inch tripod. I'll list the model name here and the link to it will be in my description. It's a compact tripod with a very small footprint, so exactly the kind of tripod I need for a small setup like the one that I have. I'll show you later on in the video how I use this tripod for both my A-roll as well as my overhead shots. For lighting, I use the newer CB200B and the CB60B. Both these lights are bicolor and COB lights, and they come at a great price. And for the fourth pillar, which is audio, I use the DJI Mic 3, which is exactly what I have in my hand right now. These items make up the core of my setup for YouTube. I will link all the products in the description below, and just so you're aware, these are affiliate links, and if you make any purchases using these links, they will go a long way to support the channel, so thank you. Okay, so let's talk about these 2 types of shots: the overhead shot and the A-roll shot. Let's start off with the overhead shot. Most creators who are just starting out always struggle to get the best overhead shots, especially if they have to work with a very small space. Sometimes the framing is incorrect, the tripod's legs come into the shot, When lights are not set up the right way, there's a shadow overcast on the table. A lot can go wrong with overhead shots. Keeping the 4 pillars in mind, let me show you what I use to get overhead shots. For my main camera, I use the Sony FX3, which is mounted on the K&F Concept tripod. One of the key features of this tripod is that you can extend its arm to become an overhead tripod. This is one of the main reasons why I bought this particular tripod, so that I could use this both for overhead shots as well as for A-roll. I have been using my Sony FX3 with multiple lenses such as the 85mm, 50mm, 90mm macro, 35mm and 16mm on this particular tripod, and there have been no issues at all. This is how my camera and my tripod is currently placed for overhead shots. When it comes to lighting or the moods that I want to create, I can use the natural light from the windows behind me, or I can use the newer lights. I make sure that the light is at a 45-degree angle so that there's no shadows casted on the table when it comes to overhead shots. A pro tip here when it comes to lighting is that you can experiment by not only moving the lights left to right, but you can also experiment by moving the lights up and down. Adjusting the height of the light also gives you many different options that you can experiment and use in your videos. And lastly, for audio, I use the DJI Mic 3. Here's the important bit, right? Before you start filming, you need to have a vision or an idea in mind, and then you should go ahead and execute it. So if you're doing overhead shots, you need to decide, am I recording audio or am I recording only video? If I'm recording audio, am I recording voiceover or am I just recording the sound effects to make an ASMR video? Knowing answers to these questions will help you understand what exactly you need to achieve the result that you want. Pre-planning your shots will reduce friction points in the whole production workflow, and this will make you enjoy the process a lot more, that's for sure. You can replicate this setup with a smartphone and a desk mount and a phone case holder that's attached to it, like the one that I have right here. Right now I have the new LED tube attached to this, but if this had a phone mount here, I could attach my phone and get the same overhead shots. All you need to do is unscrew this, lift that up, and then screw this back in. One thing that's important when you're using your phone is to make sure that you get your framing accurate. You can use the digital zoom that's available on your smartphone to zoom in and out to get the framing accurate. And for audio, you can record the audio using your phone, or if you're going to use another mic, just make sure you consider how far the mic is away from the action so that you don't miss out on capturing any good audio. A budget microphone that you can use here is the DJI Mic Mini, which works with both Android and iPhones. A budget option for lights are these newer LED tubes that I'm using. I'll put the links in the description and I'll put the details somewhere up in the video. But these are, I think, a great option for the price range if you're just starting out. Now let's talk about A-roll. A-roll is nothing but primary footage that concerns your video. For example, in this video, the primary footage is me talking to the audience by looking into the camera. The rest of the shots that I cut away into are nothing but B-roll shots. So in this case, my primary footage would be me sitting here and speaking into the camera, which is nothing but my A-roll. Now I'm going to show you how I achieve high quality A-roll footage for my YouTube channel. If you are going to create a long YouTube video, something more than 10-15 minutes long, then I would advise you to use multiple angles to keep the audience engaged. For the first angle, I shoot with my desk as the backdrop. I've got both my monitors there, along with the lights right here at a 45-degree angle, and I've got the tripod and the camera right there, which is about 7 feet away from me. I try to frame my shot when I use A-roll in such a way that I can repurpose the footage to convert it into vertical format when it comes to YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels or TikTok. I think it's easier that way than shooting multiple times. When it comes to the 4 pillars, once again, my camera is the Sony FX3. I'm currently using the Sony 85mm 1.8 lens. The distance between the camera and me right now is 7 feet. For the second pillar, which is stabilization, I use the KNF concept tripod. For lighting, I use the newer lights. The newer lights are set up at a 45-degree angle. And lastly, for audio, I use the DJI Mic 3, which is connected to my Sony FX3 camera. If you're shooting with a DSLR, the first thing you need to determine for the small amount of space that you have is what kind of lens are you going to use. And if you haven't bought a lens yet, then understanding the amount of space that you have will help you determine the kind of lens you need to buy for your camera. Position of your frame. And once on the key light. It's Abhi, and I'm sharing my journey of going from zero.
Editing is where the magic happens. It's where all that hard work for production and shoot days gets laid out and put together to tell a story. In many ways, editing is invisible storytelling, and understanding the different types of cuts is key to mastering it. So in this video, we're going to dive into 10 important editing cuts every filmmaker should know. So I don't think we can start this list without the most obvious cut of them all at number 1, and it is called, well, the cut. The cut is an instant switch between one shot to another, including audio. You would have seen thousands of these as it's the most popular cut style of them all. Here you see we cut cleanly from this bar scene to this office scene, and we're ready to take on new information. Number 2, the jump cut. This cut is when a segment of a shot has been removed and the separate ends have been spliced back together, making the shot feel like it has jumped in time. You may also see a lot of jump cuts in talking head videos like these on YouTube to help remove pauses and mistakes. In this Tarantino movie, the effect these jump cuts are having is showing the passing of time and that the characters have actually been speaking longer than the screen time being shown.
Yeah, let me tell you, I just got my part for sheer luck.
Number 3 is the match cut. The match cut is a cut that matches action, shape, color, framing, or even audio of 2 shots, seamlessly bringing the viewer into the next scene. There are 3 types of match cut. Cuts number 4 and 5 is the J cut and the L cut. A J cut is when the audio from the next scene starts before the video cuts, so the viewer hears what's coming before they see it. Here is a popular J cut from The Wolf of Wall Street, where we begin to hear Matthew McConaughey beating on his chest, leading us into the lunch scene before we visually see it.
Shut it! So!
And now I realize a lot of my examples all contain Leo DiCaprio. That was not intended at all. An L cut is the opposite. The audio from the current scene continues even after the visual cuts to the next. You're still hearing a line of dialogue or ambient sound as you're already seeing the new shot. This L cut from Ant-Man continues the character's dialogue while we're visually seeing a reenactment scene, bridging the two together.
But there was a rosé that saved the day. It was delightful. And he tells me about this girl, Emily, that we used to kick it with. It was actually the first pair of boobs that I ever touched.
It's the wrong details. It has nothing to do with the story.
These cuts are incredibly useful because they create a smoother, more natural flow between shots, especially in conversations. They let editors guide the audience's attention, build emotion, build emotional impact, and instead of just feeling like a hard stop, the J and L cut make the film feel more immersive. Alright, number 6, the fade. The fade is a classic, and it's when a shot dissolves or fades to or from a solid color. And that color is most commonly black, whereas a fade to white might be used to show the character dying or in a dream. Fades are commonly at the start or the end of the film, and they symbolize the beginning or the end of a story. Now, similar to the fade is the next transition we have, and this is the dissolve. This, instead of fading from a color, we just fade to a new shot. The dissolve is commonly used to show a passing of time either within a scene or from one scene to the next. Number 8 is cutting on action. Cutting on action means just that. You cut during the character or object's movement. Basically, when the out point of shot A matches the in point of shot B, it creates a seamless transition. Cutting on action is another very common technique used by editors, and it helps make the cuts feel smoother and more natural to the viewer. Number 9 is cross-cutting. Cross-cutting is when the editor is cutting back and forth between multiple scenes, usually at the same time. This is a common technique used in thriller-style movies.
So you had this great idea for a video. You wrote your script, planned your shots, and actually got out in the wild filming those shots. And now you're finally ready to edit. But now everything falls apart. Should I use this shot? Am I cutting too soon? Where should this go? Why does it feel What am I doing? Of course, because editing can be the most overwhelming part of filmmaking. But I've been editing for over 15 years, and today I'm sharing some of my most valuable editing tricks that will make the difference between a bunch of clips stacked together and a story that actually flows.
And that will feel good, just like that first time when you had that idea. Now let's get into it. What I want to share here are the editing choices that actually make your story flow. Things that keep people watching because they want to and because they lean into your story. These are simple but powerful secrets, and even if you only use one of them, your videos will already feel stronger. And also stick around to the end, because I will share one bonus tip that took me way too long to figure out, but once I did, it really made my editing way faster and less stressful. So here's the first secret that completely changed my process. Back when I started, I would shoot everything and then I would dive straight into the edit and just try to make things work. And every time, my timeline was a mess. So after many painful re-edits, I realized this, that your voiceover, your music and even your sound effects are way more important than most people think. So now I start my edits with only audio before I touch a single clip. Yeah, you really heard that well, but believe me, it will really change your edits. So here's how I do it. For YouTube, I record my hook and my intro voiceover before I even start shooting. Then I find music that matches the energy that I have in my head, and I will even add a few sound effects. And right away I see where my voiceover is too long, where things don't work, or where I should work on the pacing. And even better, it always gives me new inspiration and new ideas for shots. And because I haven't shot anything yet, I can still add those shots to my shot list. For example, in this video I did exactly that. Laying down my voiceover with music showed me that my voiceover was too long. That build-up can be much quicker because I don't need 7 seconds to explain that we're overwhelmed. We can do that much quicker. And the rhythm of the track that inspired me to do that paper toss scene on the beat. And another great thing about this is that once you've shot everything, the edit is already halfway done because the pacing is there, the voiceover is there, and the music is there. So the only thing you basically have left to do is add the shots in. So the next video you're working on, lock in your audio first, because you will spot some time issues instantly. And the more you do this, you know, the more your brain will practice creating a story in your head before even filming. And that actually is one of the most useful skills you can build as a filmmaker. If there's one thing that makes or breaks your video, it's pacing. Your edit speed is your storytelling pulse. And I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that I see, even from experienced editors. It's that they're staying in the same pace for too long. So here are 3 things that I think really shape pacing. The first one is shot length, because short and snappy cuts make things fast or increase the tension, and longer shots are more for emotion or producing calmness. Then the second one is shot motion. You have chaotic handheld movements that can really add energy, or smooth and stable frames that really calm things down. And I think mixing those in the right way can be really strong. And then there's the third, which is music and sound, because your soundtrack really sets the heartbeat as well. You know, a driving beat really pushes the story forward. Softer music is really what can let it breathe as well. And of course, sometimes a silence can be really strong as well. Anyway, if you keep the pace high the entire time, people will get overwhelmed. And if it stays slow, they will get bored. So yeah, it's really good to time that change and energy, because that really snaps the attention back, or it really puts people in the right emotion when you want to. For example, listen to the first 30 seconds of this video. We start with no music, tension rising with a sound effect. Then pause for a second Then full energy, quick shots, fast music. Then a short break, a longer shot. Tension is building again. Then energy back up with fast cuts.
Why does it feel off?
Then we release into slower shots and no music. Finally, we settle into a neutral pacing. And that variation is really what keeps a hook like that really alive. So the next time you edit, just spend a little more time on pacing. Just mark your big moments and your quiet moments, and then let your cuts, your movement and your music flow between them. Your audience, they will stick with you much longer, I'm sure. You know, one of the hardest things, but also one of the most important things about editing is finding music that actually fits the mood of your story. You really don't want to know how much time I spend on tweaking music in my edits just so it fits perfectly. But sometimes you wish you could just tweak a song a bit, maybe take out the vocals or take out the guitar. Well, you can do that now because Audio released Elements 2.0 a while ago, and it's a really huge upgrade. Because now you can separate every part of the track. The vocals, the drums, the bass, piano, guitar, even the strings, all in studio quality. So for me that means that I can take a track that I already love, just strip it down completely or build it back up with all those different pieces, and that just makes it really much easier to adjust the music to whatever fits the rhythm or the pacing that I'm looking for. So if you want to try that out, go explore Elements 2.0 and get 70% off your first year of Audio Pro at audio.com/timrunia using the code at checkout. And of course, you'll find the link in the description as well. So when I first started out creating videos, once I got to the editing process, before I knew it, I would spend 2 days perfecting the first 30 seconds, adding sound effects or maybe already color grading, and I would totally forget what I was making. But then I discovered the power of the assembly edit, and that's basically like sketching before you paint or outlining a book before you write. It's all about getting a rough shape down first and then start refining. So if you've already created the hook and the intro of your video with an audio blueprint, then you can use the assembly edit to shape the rest of your story fast. So here's how I do it. First, I spot the footage that tells the story. So spotting just means cut out the junk and keep the clips you will actually use. Then I drag some of them into the timeline in the rough story order with a beginning, a middle and an end. And I'm not polishing anything yet. If I already recorded my voiceover, I will drop that in too. And then I spend time finding music that matches the pace. Sometimes it's temporary music, but sometimes I can already find the real track. Then I just play everything back from the beginning to the end, and I can really watch the rough story unfold. And I just really pay attention, and immediately I will see where the gaps are, where the pacing feels off, or what kind of shots I'm still missing, or sometimes what I can really get rid of. So before you dive into polishing, build your assembly edit. Drag your key clips into a story order and then refine after that. It will save you hours of frustration, and I'm sure it will give you way more clarity on where your edit is heading and where your story is heading. So with my first edits, I loved picking a song and just cutting on the beat. We've all probably done those edits and they feel nice, but it gets repetitive pretty fast. And I think real flow goes way deeper. So here are just a few ways to create flow. The first one, cut intentionally. Don't just throw clips together, just think about where the eyes of your audience are on the screen and how the movement of the eyes flow from one shot to the next, or how one shot flows to the next. Then the second one is beat accents, because instead of cutting on the beat, you can land an action with the beat. Like when you're dropping something, or when you're stepping in the frame, or even raising an eyebrow. I will show you an example in a bit. Then the third, audio transitions, because a sound effect across 2 shots can really glue them together. And sometimes a sound effect does that even much better than the shots themselves, and combination is even better. So, for example, in the intro of this video, I cut the movement going out of the shot from the left to the right, then coming in from the right to the left. So it feels fast, but smooth. Then I hit beat accents, me coming onto the desk or raising my eyebrows right on the beat. So instead of cutting on the beat, the action itself matches the beat. So next time you edit, don't just think about speed, think about movement. Where are the eyes going? Where's the rhythm pulling? Just try one intentional cut, maybe one beat accent and one audio transition, and I'm sure your edit will feel much smoother instantly. If your edit feels predictable, people tune out. And that's why I like to break my own rhythm with a quick sudden cut or a change of scene or just something completely unexpected. So that contrast, that's really what can bring people back into your story. Even a small surprise creates a little spike of focus, and those tiny spikes are really what keep people watching, you know, as long as it's not too forced and it's part of your story. You can use contrast. This can be anything, loud versus quiet, or fast versus slow, or bright versus dark, or I add surprise, just something playful or something abrupt that no one saw coming. For example, in this video's hook, I froze the frame and dropped in text before you expected it, because it was like in the first 3 seconds. And that tiny break already made you pay much more attention. And then later, I cut to silence when I'm at the empty desk. And that sudden shift in energy that instantly makes you think, hey, what just happened there? But really try to make it a part of the story. So in your next edit, just try to find one spot to add contrast or surprise. Maybe it's a freeze frame or a quick silence or an unexpected cut. You really don't need many of those, but you know, really one well-placed surprise can already make your story pretty unforgettable. You know, editing will always be a puzzle. No matter how many tricks you learn, how many secrets you learn, there will always be this moment where it feels like things are not going to work. And that's really normal because filmmaking is really hard. But when your story finally comes together in the edit, it's always worth it. If you find it hard to finish your own videos, check out my story starter kit. The link is in the description, and
Learning how to color grade is one of the more challenging aspects. Learning how to color grade is one of the more challenging aspects when it comes to learning photo editing. Learning what works and what doesn't work, it takes a lot of trial and error. So let's see if we can speed that process up today. And I'll be sharing with you 4 more editing techniques that I've learned along the way to hopefully turn your flat, boring photo into a fantastic image. And I'm gonna start right now. Now, if you've got ugly colors in your photos, more than likely it's going to be down to your white balance. And finding the right white balance for your photo, especially if you've shot in auto white balance where you've let the camera do the work for you, you can end up with very peculiar colors. Now, white balance is all down to the light source that you're photographing. And if you're shooting in a very complicated lighting environment, or you're just new to photography and you don't really understand what white balance is, it can be very challenging. And when it comes to post-production, like this photo here, the colors, even though I've shot in almost perfect lighting environment, the colors don't look right. So what can we do? Well, there's a few things that we can do in Lightroom, but it all starts before we take the photo. And it's by using one of these. This is a grey card. Now, this is a bit of a fancy grey card. It's the one that I like using for a lot of my studio shoots, but the premise is the same. It's this giant swatch here. What you do is you take a photo of this, and then we can use this as a reference because we know this is grey. Any light source that we shoot in, this particular color isn't going to change, but the light source will. So we know that this is a set point. It's a variable that we know that doesn't change, and we can utilize that when it comes to editing inside Lightroom. So this is the photo that I'm going to be using, but obviously we don't want the grey card in this image. So what I've done is I've taken the grey card at the start of the shoot. You can also do it at the end of the shoot, as long as your light source doesn't change. Then take your range of your photos. So I've got photo 1, I've got photo 2, and I've got photo 3. All were shot in the same lighting environment. And all of the colors in these photos just don't look very good. So what we're gonna do is, with our reference photo of our grey card, what we'll do is we'll zoom into the grey card itself. Now this one has got the larger swatches because obviously it can control the skin tones as well. What we're gonna do is open up our basics panel, go to our white balance here, and simply go to our eyedropper tool. Then you want to select any of the grey ones that we can find, which for me are closest to the binder here. So for example, I'm gonna go ahead and select this one like so. And as you can see, if I now zoom out, the colors are looking so much better. Then what I can do is either write down the numbers, so 5100 Kelvin and plus 20 tint, or you can go Command C, copy it. All I need to do is go ahead and select white balance, then go to your next photo, Command V or paste those settings, and bang, immediately fixed. Next photo, bang, done. And last photo, we can also change it as well. But what happens if you don't have one of these, or you've just simply forgot to take it? For me, that happens an awful lot. Well, actually, if you're a portrait photographer, there is a hidden tip that I can show you. So what we'll do is we'll simply go to this photo. Now what I'll do is I will just simply go back to auto white balance, which is actually what I was shooting. What I'll do is I'll zoom in to the photo. What I'll do is zoom into 200%. If you haven't used a gray card, you can use the whites of your eyes, and that's a really good reference point. It doesn't work all the time, but it will help you get most of the way there. So instead of using the gray card, we'll use the whites of the eyes here, go to the eyedropper tool, find an area that's got the largest part of the eye, and try not to select any of the veins, because obviously they're red, and then go ahead and click. Then if I go ahead and zoom out, you can see it's almost the same as when I used the grey card. Originally, the grey card was 5100 Kelvin and 20 tint, where here we've got 50,050 Kelvin and plus 23 tint, so it is very similar. So I would recommend buying yourself a little grey card like this, really useful, they're fairly inexpensive. And if you've got yourself a Sony camera, you can actually use the lens cap, that is a neutral grey, or if you've just simply forgotten to use them or don't own one, then you can use the whites of the eyes. That should hopefully get better colours, because ugly colours are usually down to white balance. Now another tip to enhance the colours in our photos is called split toning. And actually it's a really useful tip that works on almost every single photo. This is where we colour the shadows and we colour the highlights in a complementary fashion. So maybe warm and cool for the highlights and shadows. And this photo is going to be a really good example. Now to create a split toning effect, we'll need to go into the color grading panel on the right hand side. Now, if you're an old Lightroom user, you've been using it maybe for 10 years, you'll know that this actually used to be called split toning, but they changed it to color grading about 5 years ago because now they allow you to color the shadows, midtones, and highlights. So for example, let's go to the shadows first. Now the shadows need to be cooled down, I think, a little bit. What we'll do is we'll go for a complementary fashion, blue in the shadows and warm in the highlights. And we can actually look at the color wheel here. So for example, if I choose a color around here, I would want to draw a line and kind of add in a color on the other side. So for example, I might choose, let's say, hue of 230 in this case, but you can choose any hue of your choice. Go to saturation and simply add in that value. So I might add in maybe plus 10 in this example. The higher the saturation, the more color you're adding in to that split toning effect. And they don't have to be balanced. It's completely up to you how you want to add in these colors. You've also got luminance here, which again, you can increase and decrease the brightness of that color that you're adding in. Usually I like going for a minus 10 in the shadows and then a plus 10 in the highlights. But again, that can differ depending on the photo that I'm working. But every time we add in a one color to create a split toning effect, we want to create a color in the highlights. So we'll go to the highlights here, add in basically the opposite color. So I might add in, let's say, hue of 50, which is roughly opposite the blue on the color wheel that we can see here. And then again, go to that saturation and add it in. Now I might add in a little bit more because there's less highlights in this particular photo. Again, it's all down to the balance of your histogram. You can check that on the top right-hand side here, but I might add in a little bit more, maybe go for 25 in this example. And actually, this has actually really aided the photo. So what I'll do is I'll do the before and after. It's added in a little bit more color that I think was lacking in the image. Now, obviously you want to compound that with other effects, maybe inside the color mixer tool to remove any ugly colors, or we can actually use the tone curve to enrich the color with a little bit more contrast. But it definitely can really help out when it comes to color grading. Split toning is an effect that I use on almost every single photo. Now, if you're finding your photos looking a little bit flat, but the contrast slider just isn't working, you might want to add in what I call color contrast. And this is done inside the tone curve. Now, the tone curve is a really useful tool. If you don't know much, because it can seem quite a complicated tool, then go ahead and watch this video here. It's my masterclass tutorial. After watching that masterclass tutorial, you're going to need to know everything that you need to know about the tone curve. But what we're doing today is creating color contrast. Now, if you go ahead and open up the tone curve, it's just found underneath the basics panel, you'll find 5 tone curves. You've got your parametric curve, which is the one that I'm going to be ignoring in this video. But then you've got your main exposure point curve. Then you've got your red, green, and blue channel point curve. And the one that we're going to be using today is red, green, and blue to add in that color contrast. Now you want to look at your photo and work out how much contrast you want adding in, or color contrast. I want to add in a small amount because I'm just finding the overall skin tones looking a little bit flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my red channel first, raise up the highlights ever so slightly, and then bring down the shadows as well, creating a very subtle S-curve. Now don't worry, the photo will look terrible until we've actually finished this effect. Now once you've made that effect, what you want to do is right click, go to copy channel settings, then go to the green channel, right click, and then paste channel settings. And do the same for blue. Right click and paste channel settings. Now what we've done is we've added in this really nice color contrast because we've affected the red, green, and blue channel. But what's really nice is because we've separated them, instead of just doing it in the exposure curve, we can now manipulate some of those colors. So for example, I might want to make the shadows a little bit more blue in this photo. So what I can do is actually go to this channel here, go to the blue channel specifically, and I might actually raise that up slightly. And then I might actually bring down the brightness in our exposure here in the blue, introducing more yellow and more warm tones to those highlights. Now again, you can adjust them to your own heart's desire, but this is a really good way to add in subtle colors, but also adding in that nice color contrast. Again, if you would like to know more about this effect, I do go over it in a little bit more detail in that masterclass tutorial. And my last tip is use photo profiles. They're really important. I see so many photographers just simply keep it at standard, but actually photo profiles can really help speed up your editing workflow and get better colors depending on the type of photo that you're working on. So to find photo profiles, simply open up the basics panel, and right at the top, you've got a thing called profile. Now, if you go ahead and click on that profile, you've got a few that you can choose from. You've got Adobe Color, which is the standard every time you open up a photo, but you've got Adobe Landscape, Adobe Portrait, Adobe Standard V2, Adobe Vivid, and then you've got a few ones here that I've personally selected. Now, for example, this is a portrait photo. So I would go ahead but you've got Adobe Landscape, better colors depending on the type of photo that you're working on. So to find photo profiles, simply open up the basics panel, and right at the top, you've got a thing called profile. Now, if you go ahead and click on that profile, you've got a few that you can choose from. You've got Adobe Color, which is the standard every time you open up a photo, but you've got Adobe Landscape, Adobe Portrait, Adobe Standard V2, Adobe Vivid, and then you've got a few ones here that I've personally selected. Now, for example, this is a portrait photo. So I would go ahead and select Adobe Portrait. This sets up the image to get better skin tones. For example, if I was working on a landscape image, then if I go ahead and click Adobe Landscape, it actually enriches some of those colors. We haven't changed any sliders. This is Lightroom setting up our photo to get better colors depending on the type of photo. Photo that you're working on. Adobe Landscape also adds in a little bit more contrast. If you notice the difference between Adobe Portrait, it looks a little bit flatter versus Adobe Landscape. So you can see they do make a fairly big difference. But also don't think that these are your only options. In fact, if I go ahead and click on the little right-hand side, you've got this 4 square here, this opens up your photo profile settings, and there's loads to choose from. Really useful if you want to create a vintage look or a black and white look. You've got a whole variety here. Again, we're not changing any settings. This is Lightroom doing it for us. It's doing the work for us. So what I'll do is I'll quickly show you, we've got adaptive, artistic, black and white, modern, and vintage. So if I go ahead and click on vintage, you've got 10 to choose from, and you can see each photo or each particular preset kind of changes the look of our image. And you can see that they actually create a fairly big impact. Now, your color photo profiles, which is It can actually help you get better photos and remove any ugly color issues, as well as getting the right amount of contrast for your photo without making any slider changes.
The DJI Neo released in August 2024 and I had to get my hands on one straight away. After putting in some serious hours of flying the Neo, I've created this video which should tell you everything you need to know to get set up and flying with the Neo, whether you've never flown a drone before or are an experienced flyer. So what is the DJI Neo? In short, it's a tiny 4K drone packed with new and exciting features such as takeoff and landing from your hand, AI subject tracking, automatic footage capture, and multiple ways to fly, including with your phone or without a controller at all. The Neo weighs an incredibly light 135 grams and is about the size of a hand, so is super light and portable and will be great for travel. It's also super agile, especially when paired with the optional DJI goggles and RC motion controller, and has a great transmission range of up to 10 kilometers. It's also currently DJI's lowest priced drone at just £169 or $199 at the time of filming, making it one of the best value ones on the market. Just so you know, I'm not affiliated with DJI and bought the Neo for myself, and if you're interested in getting one for yourself, check out my affiliate links in the description below. The Neo comes on its own with one battery and no remote control, or as a Fly More combo kit, which I have here, and this costs a little more at £299 or $289, but that's still a really great price, 18 miles per hour, which means it can still be used if it gets a little gusty, but really needs good conditions to fly. You've got the camera at the front, which is currently behind the protector, as well as buttons to fly the drone next to it and the power button at the other end, whilst underneath you have the battery and sensors, though these aren't obstacle avoidance sensors and there aren't any on this drone. The battery is easily removable via the clip, and this makes up the base and much of the weight of the drone. The 1435 mAh lithium-ion batteries last up to 18 minutes in optimum conditions, so you'll likely get around 15 minutes flying time out of them. This isn't much compared to the 30 minutes of the next DJI drone, the Mini 4K, but it's one of the compromises of having a much smaller drone, and all the more reason to buy the Fly More combo kit, which comes with extra batteries. The batteries weigh 45 grams, so about a third of the Neo's overall weight, and cost £35 each when purchased separately. At the back of the drone there is a USB-C charging port, but no SD card slot, as there's 22GB of built-in memory, which will hold about 40 minutes of 4K video at 30 frames per second, or 55 minutes of 1080p video at 60 frames per second. You can get footage off the drone by either plugging the drone into a computer via the USB-C port, or by downloading clips straight to your phone from the DJI Fly app. The port will charge one Neo Intelligent Flight battery in approximately 1 hour at speeds of up to 65 watts. These batteries are a completely new design, so won't be compatible with any of DJI's other current drones. As mentioned, along the top you have the power button, which uses the standard short press then long press to turn the drone on, followed by the propellers activating and LEDs appearing on the panel nearest the camera. And you can navigate through the modes by pressing the button, with a voice calling out which mode you've selected. Taking the protect can control what it does in the settings, though as standard it tilts the gimbal down 90 degrees. Charger and accessories. They're for using iPhones with the remote control. Next up are two spare propellers, one for the front and one for the back, should you break the originals. To replace them you'll need the included mini screwdriver, and then finally there's turn the drone on by short pressing then long pressing the flying distance of 50 meters in palm taking backwards, and then another while flying forward. The third mode is circle, which records footage while flying. Tap that and you'll see wave button. This will launch the drone from your hand or the ground and will provide two virtual joysticks on the screen, simulating the physical joysticks of a handheld controller. Here you can maneuver the drone around, use both at the same time, controlling it within the maximum flight distances. It's a nice method for if you still want something tangible to press and control, instead of just relying on the drone's AI abilities. On the manual control page you can also switch between photos and videos, use the big red button to capture, and there's also a microphone button because using the app also allows audio recording from the phone or an external microphone plugged into the phone. The sound is automatically synced to the drone's video file, so it would be great for talking to the drone as it follows you and recording sound from your surroundings. To bring the drone down, there's a landing button to the left of the Smart Snap selection button, as well as voice control options to the right of it. Under settings you'll find commands for this, which I'll come onto in a bit. The next Smart Snaps are the same as palm takeoff, with the direction track being changeable to helix or boomerang in the settings. All you have to do is have the drone facing you, select your chosen Smart Snap and hit the big green start button. To the bottom left of this button, you also have access to the manual controls should you need to intervene and stop or move the Neo during an automated flight pattern. In the footer bar, there's a button for visiting the drone album so you can see all of your clips. To the right is the settings button, and this adds another level of control to the smart snaps. Each of them have changing rate to 50 or 60 frames, following and setting you'll be flying in. To get flying with the remote control, place the drone to the right and press to the left to shift left. There are a few other bits on the remote control that it's important to know too, to make the flying and capturing of footage that bit easier. On the top right of the remote, you've got the video or photo button, which starts and stops recording or takes a picture. On the left you have a dial, and this changes the shooting angle of the gimbal. By default it goes down 90 degrees to face the ground, and upwards 60 degrees to film above you. The function button on the left is changeable, which I'll show in the settings shortly, but as standard it will tilt the gimbal down 90 degrees so you're facing the ground. The camera rotate button on the right will switch between filming and photos without having to use the app. Press the H or pause button once and it will pause the drone in flight, whilst a long press will initiate RTH or return to home. If the drone is more than 20 meters away, it will ascend to the RTH height to avoid obstacles and come back on a predetermined path which shows on the app screen. If the Neo is between 5 and 20 meters away, it will begin its RTH path without ascending, and if it's less than 5 meters away, it will just begin landing. The Neo will auto return to home if the battery gets too low too, which is usually below 20%, or if it loses transmission signal with the remote control, so that you don't end up with your drone stuck in midair, running out of battery and then falling. Finally, then got details of the time remaining until return to home, then the remote control signal to the drone, as well as the GPS strength and number of satellites available. The 3 dots are the settings, where there's lots more to adjust. I won't go through absolutely everything as there's just so much, but under the first safety tab you can adjust RTH altitude as well as flight distances, update your home point, calibrate the drone, and do Find My Drone, which starts flashing and beeping to locate it if it gets lost, along with showing its location on the map. Under the control tab, you can change your units, enable subject scanning, make gimbal adjustments, change your stick mode, and it's here that you can change what the function button does when you single or double press it. Under the camera tab you can format the Neo's internal memory, adjust the coding format, add grid lines to the flying screen, and make changes to the Neo boomerang, are great ways to get incredible I've actually made a full video on the PV remote costing a drone, actually coming in way under maneuvers and captivating footage. If you're a serious drone enthusiast and want to add the Neo to your collection, then you may already have these to hand to use, but it makes sense for most people who want their first drone at a great price to use the other 3 methods of controlling the Neo that won't break the bank. The DJI Neo supports video resolution of 4K at 30 frames per second and 1080 at 30, 50 and 60 frames per second. The 4K is good quality, though not quite as crisp as other drones on the market such as the Mini 4K, and whilst at £169 you don't get options like HDR, D-Log or multiple lenses, for what you pay you've got lovely video and photos thanks to
Welcome back to the channel. In today's video I want to showcase a pretty cool and it's called the whole editing process. Good. Alright, real quickly, before you go ahead and start shooting, you're going to want to go ahead and make sure you're shooting at, I typically say 60 FPS. Sometimes you can get away with 30 FPS, but I like to shoot at 60, not always. Alright, ready? Look straight, yep. Three, two, one. Cool, perfect.